Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our DataWalk software showcase. I apologize for the delay. We are experiencing some very challenging Teams difficulties. As you may or may not know, my DataWalk counterparts are based out of the States, and Teams tenants are being jumbled up with different email addresses. So we are working on fixing that as soon as we are able. But I do want to get get started here, and hopefully we can have Chris join us. We're waiting on Chris. Hopefully he can join us to run his demo. But thank you again, everyone, for coming to Orangutech seminar. DataWalk is a new partner of ours, and we look forward to being able to show you the software a little bit. Just a quick agenda for this afternoon. We'll do a quick introduction to Orangutech, introduction to DataWalk. Mark will do that, and then Chris will take us through DataWalk platform overview. If we do not have Chris for this afternoon, then we will reschedule at another time. I apologize, but we are working out our technical difficulties. Speakers for today: myself, Director of Partnerships and Marketing here at Orangutech, Chris Westfall, Chief Analytics Officer at DataWalk, and Mark Massop, Vice President Sales at DataWalk. About Orangutech, we are dedicated to propelling the modern workplace forward, and that has, obviously changed in the past couple of years. What does that look like? We're focused on digital workplace, user adoption, and information management. We have a variety of software and consulting services that sort of fall in all these categories. And really, we see DataWalk as a crucial member of data visualization and insights. DataWalk is a platform for visualizing your data. We spend countless hours generating data, in Microsoft 365 and in the cloud, but how are we actually going to parse that data? How are we going to analyze that data? And that is what we hope to go through today with DataWalk. Orangutech are experts in the federal government. We're experts in navigating procurement, and we're thought leaders in the move to the Microsoft 365 cloud. 95% of our business is federal government. That's the space that we play in. We have value-focused partnerships. DataWalk being a partner of ours, and us being a three competency, gold competency with Microsoft as well. So if I'm able here to throw it to Mark, if you want to unmute, and then he can go over quickly DataWalk, the DataWalk platform.
1 second. Eric, give me 1 more second. I'm just trying to wrap up and help Chris get in.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I can talk about Orangutech a little bit more. Orangutech has a variety of software partners, and again, we are focused on these 3 categories as well: digital workplace, user adoption, and information management, with today a focus on data visualization and insights. DataWalk can be both a cloud or on-premise platform, and again, is a platform for investigating and carrying out that departmental mandate. What do we do with all this data? What do we do with all this information that we're generating? And so DataWalk is able to make that very visual and make that very easy to comprehend. So we can wait on Mark here. And while Mark's talking, I can work on patching Chris in as well. But I'll leave it up to Mark to talk.
All right, Eric. Chris is still trying to figure this out. And so for the folks on the call this afternoon, or depending on what part of the country you're in, it could be still morning. My name is Mark Massop, I'm Vice President of Sales here at DataWalk. I wanted to thank Eric and Orangutech for allowing us to present to everybody that's here this afternoon. Just by way of more introduction, I come out of very similar technology. I've been with DataWalk a little over 2.5 years. I've prior to DataWalk, I worked for IBM that owned I2, and then I was I2 before IBM owned us for about 15 years. So I've been around with data visualization tools, data analytics tools for a long number of years, and prior to that, I'm actually a retired police officer. So really kind of thinking through what is DataWalk, and the way I like to kind of position our product and our company is the challenge that anybody faces with the data that is out in the world to help drive your business forward. So if you kind of don't pay attention to the words on the left-hand side of the screen, kind of take a look at that puzzle there on the right-hand side of the screen. So whether you're doing traditional investigations, whether you're looking at fraud, whether you're looking at, one of the big challenges here in the U.S. right now is unemployment fraud with the amount of money that the U.S. federal government has thrown at the pandemic. And so there's fraud running left and right because there's trillions of dollars that are basically given away from the federal government to a lot of people on the streets. But when you start to think about how to address that, you've got a lot of data silos sitting around. And DataWalk was built to really help you bring all this together. So the idea behind it is you've got, as an example, looking at this puzzle piece, right? I got cameras in the upper left corner. I got visitors in the bottom right corner. I've got people. I've got crimes. I've got CTRs, cash transaction reports. I've got, phones. And all of those individual pieces help you to kind of build that big picture. And DataWalk was really architected to bring data from a variety of different locations to help you kind of understand what the answer is that you're trying to find. But it boils down to a couple other key takeaways also. We've kind of built this as a very reasonable, cost-effective alternative to some of the other big data platforms that are in the marketplace. Very open standards, published APIs, no proprietary formats. What does that mean? That means no data lock-in either. All the data that comes into our system, all the enrichment, all the enhancements we do to the data, that's our customer's data. If the customer decides in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever that time period is, to walk away from DataWalk, you get all your data back, plus you get all of that enhancement and enrichment we do to the data also. Very powerful analytics and visualizations, which equates to easy to use. And when I say easy to use, that boils down to easy to train as well. So again, I kind of come out of the I2 world. And if anybody on the call is familiar with, Analyst Notebook and some of the other I2 products, I started my career with I2 as a trainer. And I go back to those days, and I took a week-long basic Analyst Notebook class. It was a 5-day class. The advanced class was 5 days. If you had iBase, which was the database component, it was another 5 days. DataWalk training is 5 days end to end. That's everybody that's going to be somebody that's just going to come in and be a simple user, all the way through the folks who are going to manage the solution on the servers. It's also very, very, very scalable. And you see there in small print on commodity servers. What does that mean? It means not a heavy hardware lift to get DataWalk deployed, get DataWalk up and running. We've gone from a very small deployment all the way up, and we've sized this up to the current test. The last one we did was, I'm thinking, 46 terabytes of data. So DataWalk can scale very dramatically and without losing any speed. The analytical workflows, consistent rules, and simplified training. That's actually kind of a unique characteristic of our technology. It allows us to kind of embed the human's thought process into workflow. Chris Westfall, if we can get him into the call here, and Eric, I saw your note, and the answer is no. If I can get Chris into the call, he spent, prior to joining DataWalk, he actually built his own company and ultimately sold it off to a major system integrator here in the US. But, one of his key challenges, he worked with a lot of the federal agencies in the US. And it was if you're not familiar with an organization called FinCEN, it's our financial crime center for the US federal. He spent a good part of his career walking the hallways, working with the analysts, working with financial data. And Chris is one of those unique people that can look at data and really see what the challenge is and help pull out the various pieces to help build that picture piece on the right-hand side of the screen. But the challenge, especially in FinCEN, all the analysts are seconded from various federal agencies. So they spend anywhere from 18 to 24 months and they go back to their parent agency. So about the time Chris got somebody educated and really smart on how to kind of work that type of investigation, they were going back home. So he had to start that all over. And he really had trouble trying to get, obviously encoding his brain into the technology. And those consistent workflows, simple, and the analytic workflows allow us to do that. And they're repeatable. And if we get to the demo, Chris will definitely highlight that as well. Minimal IT support, obviously, it's all about lower cost of implementation, which means lower cost of ownership downrange also. Next slide, Eric. Now, if you're familiar with link analysis, if you look at this graphic on your screen, this very much looks like a link chart. But this is kind of the uniqueness of DataWalk as well. If you're familiar with databases, when you go to like a traditional database, a SQL database, you're typically looking at rows and columns. You're looking at tables. You're looking at fields on tables. And then obviously to create relationships in those relational databases, you're looking at linking tables between those various entity tables. With DataWalk, we simplify that entire process. What you're looking at on your screen right now is a view, which we call our universe viewer. And this is your universe of data. So the data models, depending on who the customer is, look different from client side to client side because they're all looking at different types of data. But as an example, that big blue icon says people in the middle. If I drilled into that, underneath that, I'm going to see kind of the traditional rows and columns. I'm going to see all the people's names, all the pertinent information, first name, last name, date of birth, height, weight, gender, etc. That would encompass a normal database table. The reason we kind of take this approach, it makes it very easy for end users to actually start to write very complex questions against your data because you can understand how one table is connected to another table. So as an example, in the bottom, this is a little more of a law enforcement focused question, but maybe I'm looking at visitors in the bottom right that are connected to any license plate reader records on the far left of my chart. So I can see visitors connected to records, visit records, who are connected to inmates, inmates to people, people to vehicles, and crimes. Crimes go to plates directly to LPR and cameras also. So I know there's a path to ask that question. Now I may not get an answer because the data might not be there yet, but at least I know visually I can ask a question to my data. And this allows us to combine and relate, potentially hundreds of different data sources together, and then analyze potentially billions with a B records in very short order. But it also allows our clients to integrate what I like to call ad hoc data. So maybe you've got, your internal data sets. You're pulling data from, your traditional databases. You're going to kind of merge all that together in our platform. But maybe you got to do some call data records analysis, CDRs. Or maybe you get some financial data you want to bring in. Or maybe there's another type of spreadsheet of data you want to bring in. So we can easily bring in that external data, drag and drop it into the platform, model that with a couple little mouse clicks, and complete your analysis. Next slide, Eric. Now we start to think about kind of the, how government's been kind of sliding in big data analytics, especially at the federal space. Again, I've been working around this type of technology and data for a very long time. And when I start to think about, a lot of the data sets that are kind of out there, sorry, I'm still trying to solve this problem with Chris. I think we've got to work around. Hopefully it'll work here in a second. But one of the key challenges, one of the issues is, the amount of data and the growth of data over the last 10, 20 years. Business sector, when we say the business sector, you look at your commercial businesses. They've been kind of on the leading edge of leveraging that data, but a lot of governments are now exploring how to leverage the information they have at their fingertips. And really, there's those three different roles where analytics can produce significant improvements. Public supervision deals with detecting and penalizing noncompliance with government laws such as CBSA. The regulations, FinTrack, and FinTrack's very much like our FinCEN. Public service delivery, which focuses on providing services or products, health services, especially with what all our countries have been going through for the last almost 2 years now. But the volume, velocity, and variety of structured and unstructured data making analytics is increasingly a challenge because the growth is unbelievable. And multiple data sources. I can walk into almost any of my clients right now, and on average, I'm going to start with at least 5 to 10 different unique data sources. And you kind of look around the room, and you're probably going to find more because we've siloed data so dramatically over the last years. So the idea is to try to bring it together in a single platform so you can actually leverage that data. And most software today is desktop software. When we talk about the I2 world, for example, Analyst Notebook's still a desktop product, and I still, I'm a fan of Analyst Notebook. I've been around it for 20 some odd years now, but we've outgrown it, and that's challenging because if you got to work disconnected, you got to work on a different computer, you want to get to your information. Nice thing about DataWalk is we're 100% browser based, so you don't have to worry about, do I have the right computer with the right software installed? All I got to do is get to that URL and log into it. And then finally, sliding into the last slide. And these are just some simple sample applications. So DataWalk is think of it as a platform, not as, it's not a law enforcement tool. It's not a fraud tool. It's not any of those. It's everything. So it really kind of depends on the data and the use cases. So as an example, social welfare. I mentioned earlier, one of the key challenges right now in the US is unemployment fraud. And we've got a couple clients now using DataWalk to help them identify fraudulent benefit claims. Same with healthcare. Actually in Europe, one of the countries in Europe picked up DataWalk primarily for COVID tracing. Domestic security, border security. I've got clients on both continents right now using this tool for border security issues. Military, threat intelligence, social network analysis, transportation, emergency, environment, and fisheries, regulate and investigate threats. So those are a lot of the, just sample use cases. So, the idea behind this conversation is this. Don't think about DataWalk as, this is a law enforcement tool or this is a military tool. Think about it as one of the key challenges that folks have when they're really trying to work through the data they have in front of them and trying to make sense of that data. Now, what I'm about to try to do, we'll see if this works.
Yeah, so thanks, Mark, for that excellent breakdown of DataWalk. What we're going to try to do here, everyone, is we're going to try to patch Chris through Mark's desktop and have Mark share his screen and have Chris go through that way. So bear with us for a minute or two while we attempt our workaround.
Let's see if this works.
Mark, can you hear me?
I've got you, Chris. Eric, can you see Chris's screen?
Yeah, it looks like we are good to go.
Mark, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you great.
Yeah, Chris, we got you.
All right, cool. So you can see my screen okay?
Yep,
Everything
fire away.
You're cool. Good to go.
all right, good. Sorry about that. Well, always with technology, you can always get a little hiccup, but there's good news is you can always find a way around it. So anyhow, so let's continue with the discussion. Build on a little bit what Mark was saying. You know, there's a lot of different applications where the tool can be applied and used. It's not just for specific industry or specific uses. We're basically here to help do analysis on data. And I'm going to take you through a scenario where we're going to do some unemployment kind of fraud detection, improper payments. And we picked this just because generically you've got an entity, in this case a person, who's got certain characteristics and is involved in a transaction, in this case the unemployment benefits. But think about it for the different industries. It could be applying for other benefits. It could be tax refunds. It could be applications for other benefits. It could be visas, housing allowances, whatever it might be. What we're trying to do is to detect those that are not qualified, improper payments, people that have multiple instances, basically conducting fraud and abuse. So I'm going to show you results here for a scenario where I'm going to use a lot of synthetic data. So this data has all been made up, and I'm going to take you through some scenarios and just show you very basically how we can identify patterns and trends on what we're looking at here. Now, I do have the nice Canadian flag, and I have certain terminology in here, but I created this with some US-based data, so you'll see that when we get down to the States. So let's keep it simple. If you were to think about somebody committing benefits fraud or unemployment fraud, what were the things we'd want to look for? So we could tap around here and we could see that we've got data in each one of these data sets. And you can see I've got several different data sets, 5 or 6 distinct data sets in here. So one of the questions I might ask is, let me go ahead and select everybody that's receiving a benefit in our system. Now, in the real world, in a production system, this wouldn't be 1,000 people. This would be 1 million people. It could be 10 million people. We have systems that run up well into the hundreds of millions of records, and we're designed to scale to those levels. So again, this is just a demonstration, and we're going to look for anybody that has received payments or claims from multiple, in this case, provinces or states within the US. And I can simply select the relationship and say, show me anybody that has 2 or more connections to states. So you can see I went from 1,000 potential targets down to 1, or let me say 1,000 potential records down to 1 record that fulfills that condition that we're looking for. And at this point, what I'm doing is I'm looking at all of the sets here. I've identified a record of interest. I now want to look at the details of that record. So I'm going to go to a link chart here. I'm going to take that and I'm going to materialize this object. I'm going to look at it and I'm going to say, well, who is this one person? If there had been more people, I would see much more icons being shown in here. So Barclay Pritchmere is the guy who's had more than 2 provinces where he's received payments from. So what we can do is we can
Mark, you went on mute there. Do you mind unmuting so we can hear Chris again?
too. So what I'd like to do in this case is I'm going to look at that and say, well, show me the payments that were made into those 2 different states. I'm going to add those in. And what you're going to see in here is that we have a payment made to Virginia. We have another payment made to Virginia. And we also have a payment made to Maryland, right? So the actual data itself doesn't really matter, but we've got 2 distinct values. And the common sense in this is, well, why would somebody be receiving multiple payments from different provinces, different states? And interestingly, when you look at this, this is a March 6th. This is a May 9th, and then in between, we've got the Maryland filing. So why did he have 2 Virginia filings and then the Maryland filing in between? That's very unusual. That really wouldn't happen in the real world, so that's why it's a circumstance we'd want to pay attention to. I can also say, you know something, I could look at this, and let's say instead of 3 transactions, it was dozens of transactions. So one of the things I could do is I could also say, for the states that are represented here, show me the aggregate amounts that were paid by those states to this entity. And what it'll do is do a nice aggregation for me and say, you know something? In Virginia, we got a total of $1,593. So if you added this amount up and this amount up, it would be $1,593. And of course, the Maryland payment is $894, and we can see that. So the tool gives us some very dynamic and very capable ways where we can go through a lot of data and see what the results are. And it helps us ask what the questions are that we may not know what we need to ask initially to start out. Because remember, we're trying to find new patterns and trends. We already knew what the fraud looked like. Our existing systems could find it. So what we're trying to do is discover the things that we want the system to help us to identify. All right, so this is a real simple example, and you can see we found some good results using this process. So I'm going to go back to my viewer here, and I want to point out when I was clicking around, you notice that I had these breadcrumbs appear. And every time I click and said, hey, you know, I want to see everybody has count more than one, or I want to see these filters for these values, this is actually recording my analytical process. And importantly, what I can do is I can save off this process. And I can give this a name and say, you know, payments from multiple states. And so on. So I can save that off. I've already saved this off, so I'm not going to do that right now. And then what I can do is I can then reset this, and I can start to ask different questions. So this next one, I'm going to say, you know something? I want to look at people, and I want to look at them that aren't from the province that I'm in right now. And so in this case, I happen to be in the state of Virginia. And what I can do is I can use a histogram to show me the breakdown of all the values within a set. And I can pick any value in that set. In this case, I'm looking at the state. And you can see the breakdown. And I call these facets. I call these categories. And we'll see the individuals back to what we're actually looking at here. And so I am in Virginia, so I don't want to see the Virginia. I want to look at the Maryland and West Virginia transactions, or the West Virginia activities. So I'm going to filter on those. And you'll see I've got 354 results that are not from the province that I'm in. And the nice thing about this platform is that not only can we do the link charting, but we can also do mapping. So in this case, well, where do these objects, where do these addresses actually exist within Maryland and West Virginia? I'm going to go ahead and turn off these labels. And you can see that, you know, if I zoom out a little bit, the state of Virginia is right here. So these up here in Maryland and these over here in West Virginia, we're paying, the state is paying out to people who aren't even part of this environment. So that's something to pay attention to as well. Again, just another dimension, another facet, and I can visually see that. And a lot of times too, you know, you can see that they're right on the border, you know, or they might be in areas where you have a heavier concentration, you know, why are we looking at certain concentration of areas? So again, just another way to look at the information. And just like last time, I could take the sequence across the top and I can save it off. And I'm going to do one more scenario here. I'm going to go ahead and reset this. Again, you can see quickly and easily how easy this is done. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, out of everybody receiving benefits, are any of them in prison? So I can simply click on the inmates and see that 5 of them are actually in prison. I could also click on the link and say, hey, is there anything greater than 1 connection? And that'll reduce down the 5 people for me here. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bring up a link chart. And let me tell you a little story here. So obviously with the whole pandemic and all the payments that have been made for unemployment in California in December of last year, they identified a fraud that was over $2 billion. And the unemployment assistance was being sent to prisoners, people who were incarcerated. So that's $2 billion with a B that the state of California was paying to incarcerated people for unemployment assistance. Bank of America is one of the banks, and they identified 345,000 accounts, different accounts, and later on identified another 62,000 that basically they were paying prisoners to collect unemployment. So let me go ahead and select these guys here, extend them out. They found some other things too when they did that. They also found that there were over 76,000 accounts that were set up to states that bordered California, but also didn't border California, and a number of them also were sent overseas. So it wasn't just focused in a specific area, it was kind of prevalent across everything. So if I bring this in, I can say, well, show me who the inmates are, and we can see them now. I'll simply just do a little redrawing here, and you can see that, hey, these names are matching up. We got a date of birth here, we got a date of incarceration here. I can also then extend this out and say, show me the payments that were made, because in reality, somebody maybe went to jail after they started receiving payments, right? And that could happen. Or maybe somebody got out of jail and started to receive payments because they didn't have a job when they got out. You know, so we could eyeball some of this stuff and say, you know, this was done in May 2020. This guy's been incarcerated since January of 2006. So obviously, you know, there is no call it justified overlap period. He's in jail, he's receiving payments, he shouldn't be. If we look at the rest of these, we also see the same thing as well. The other thing we could do is we could take this one more step and say, well, is there any kind of collusion or maybe any kind of additional connections because of the prisons that they're in? And now you can see that, yep, these guys are all from a specific facility. Let me just show this out in a different way. So these four are from one facility, this guy's from a different facility. So maybe we could take some kind of preventive action that's there. Maybe we could talk to the wardens, we could talk to the, you know, the folks that are processing the mail there and kind of keep an eye for these things so we can, or even just send training notifications. Hey, if you do this, this is illegal, you shouldn't be doing those things. So again, it's just data to us, but we can then start to show how things interconnect and how they flow within the environments that we deal with. And then also importantly in here too, every step that I took to generate this diagram, if I were to save this off, because let's say I was going to send this to Mark to work on, because he's going to do some additional analysis. When I save this off, it'll actually show me each step I took to get to these results. So Mark doesn't have to guess, well, how did you find this? What questions did you ask? Who did you click on? I've got the whole sequence right down here, and I can replay through that to get to my final results, to get to where I actually want to see within my environment here. Okay, so that makes it easy to present information. It makes it easy to collaborate with other analysts and to also document, you know, for prosecutorial purposes or for just even justifying to management. How did we find these things? Well, here's exactly what I did. Here's what I found. Okay, so now, having said all that, what's important here is that we can do some final last things here. And I'm going to show you a really cool feature within this platform. The next thing I wanted to do was to show you something where we could actually look at the transactions themselves and get a little bit of insight. If I look at the payments here, I got these 3,000 payments. I can break down the amounts into these facets as well. And you can see I've got a range of values that exist in here. I could also look at this in a table view, which is just like a spreadsheet. Everybody's familiar with the spreadsheet. And whether I had 1,000 records, 3,000 records, or 300 million records, I'd still be able to see all this. And for the amount column here, you can see I did a little bit of statistics, and the minimum amount is $700, the maximum amount is $900, and the average amount is $790. Okay, so for this column that we're looking at. And why is that important is because, you know, if I'm going to commit fraud, I'm going to probably go for the higher dollar amounts. You know, if I'm going to go through the effort of setting up the accounts and submitting the claims and going through that. So maybe I want to look at within my data here, those claims that have a higher amount associated with them. So the facets kind of show me those distributions. And I'm going to go ahead and decide everything above $850, I can go ahead and make those selections. Now I can do it here in the histograms. I can also do it in a filter, which shows up on the other side, which allows me to say, hey, pick the amount is greater than or equal to, and I can just simply type in 850. So depending on the user preference, you can interact with the system differently. I can apply that. That gets me to 533 payments. And then you notice these facets redrew themselves because now it's giving me the breakdown for only everything above $850. And so you can see that I've only got 9 in the above the $900 range and the rest format there. So it makes it pretty easy to do those things. And, you know, we can look at the counts of these buckets and we can set all this up to find those things. And just like everything else, I could save that back off. Now, in having saved off all this, each one of those queries that I ran, you know, payments over $850. I've got 400, in this, what I ran, I've got 465. Payments for multiple states. We saw that that's Barclay, right? We had one person from multiple states. So all of these different conditions, all of these different queries, you know, payments to prisoners, there's the 5. Because remember, every day we're going to be updating the data, right? Every night, every hour, the data is going to constantly be changing. And so every one of these rules, every one of these queries is going to have different results associated with it. We have one client, a European client doing insurance fraud that has over 300 workflows created, 300 queries against their data because they're looking for questionable claims. They're looking for adjusters that may be in collusion to commit fraud. They're looking at the policyholders themselves. So they've created all these conditions. And they've done it by themselves on their own data and created quite a nice, what I'm going to call knowledge library. And so, and if any one of these was super important, so let's say, hey, all of a sudden a new application comes in and it's being paid to a prisoner, I can actually set this up so I can configure an alert. So no matter what, if this value changes, if it increases, decreases, or we've got any change, I can then have an email sent to me or a triggering system, ticketing system sent that gives me the details and says, you've got to pay attention to this because we've now got new data based on a prisoner. You need to look at this right away. Or that could also be sent to another system and immediately said, flag this transaction in a hold or suspense until somebody reviews it and okays it or, you know, leaves it in a deny. So now the cool thing that we can do with all of these workflows is I can create a risk score from them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here to my diagram, to my universe viewer. And for the people that I've got here, I'm going to say, let's go ahead and create a score. Yeah, nice. And it's going to give me all of the available workflows for people. And so I'm just going to call this risk score, I'll say fraud. And what it lets me, I can create as many scores as I want, and it lets me choose which one of these workflows I want to include. And I can now weight these accordingly. So payments over $850, you know, we'll weight that 5. Payments for multiple states, definitely we want to look at that. That's a higher risk. There's 10 points there. From out-of-state addresses, definitely let's put 10 on that. You know, the prisoners, that's a 25. That's a heavy rule right there. You know, people who have active warrants, we're gonna make that 15. You know, people who have death master, sure, if you're dead, we're gonna hit 25 there. And so we can go ahead and we can fill in all these with different values. I'll just go ahead and put 5, 4 or 5 on the rest of these two. And then what happens is I'm gonna go ahead and save that, and the system's gonna calculate for the entity that appears in each one of these workflows and aggregate the score that I set for them. And so you can see the set is being created here and it's running through all that. And so now I finally get a risk score out here, and I've got, out of the 1,000 people that I've got, 747 have a non-zero risk score. So obviously some people in here, you know, are doing things that are not questionable. But we've got at least 747 of them with some kind of a score assigned. Now, just like any set in here, I can change the icon, make it look pretty. So I can define that in there. And then if I drill down on this and actually look at this in the table view, what you're going to see is that I've got a column here that says the score, and you can see all these scores are different. I've got all these columns here on the right-hand side, which are which workflows triggered for that record. So if I sort the score here, my lowest score is 4, you know, and that one ties to, you know, the recipient matches payroll taxes. My highest score is 45. And because he triggered payments over 850, out of state to prisoner. So you can see exactly which workflows. Again, it's a self-documenting analysis. So, you know, I might want to take these top guys here. I could set alerts up on this. I could do all sorts of things, or I could come back into my diagram here. I could select this, go to my histogram, and this is the first time seeing this that it says, oh, what do you want to do? I want to take the scores. I'm going to put them into 10 buckets. Maybe I want to show also, hey, if I've got a payment to a prisoner or somebody who's dead, I can apply those in there too. And then I can look at this and say, you know something, I want to look at everybody, who's above a certain score. And, maybe for this case, we pick anything that's above 30. And we go ahead and we can apply that. We've got 7 people. These are the 7 people. I now go to a link chart. And these are my highest profile entities from the data set based on the workflows and the weighted scores that I applied to. Okay. So you can see that's very straightforward. And I can understand exactly what happened with Gabriel here or Matthew, and I can drill down and see all that specific information. And so that's important. And because, again, we're discovering new things, we want to document what we're doing, and the data is going to change on us every single time we update the data. Or more importantly, down the road, let's say there's new data sources we want to incorporate. We can then modify our workflows or modify these scores to handle that. The other sets that I didn't reference in here, but you saw me use them in the scores, is people who are on the death master. So if I have these 1,000 people who have died, so I've got 3 people who are technically dead. I've got people who have criminal warrants. I've got people who appeared on payroll tax. That means they've got a job someplace and their ID number is being paid a wage, but yet they're collecting unemployment. So think of these as all as different sources. And over time, you're going to get access to different sources. You may have access to different organizations or agencies and be able to bring all that in and all that together. And I'm going to save my coolest thing for last here, and I'll leave a little bit of room for questions. Is so if you think about it, and you're going to commit fraud against an organization, or you're going to do some kind of an activity that isn't legitimate, you're going to probably do it over and over and over again, right? So the way that some people can do that, and this kind of comes down to a form of like identity theft, or at least representing yourself to a system. So if you're signing up on an application and you got to put your name and address and all your contact information, if I look at these people here, you can see my breakdown here. One of the fields I have is the email address. And you can see all I have is accounts of 1. So this one email address has only appeared once in the 1,000 people that are here. If I go to my table view, you'll see here's the email address that was provided in the data, and it's just like what you saw there. Everybody has a unique email address. So the one thing you may or may not know, and this is specific for Gmail accounts, but Gmail accounts doesn't recognize periods. So if I had a Gmail account, chris.westfall@gmail, you could email me at that and I'd get it. You could also email me at just chriswestfall@gmail. I'd still get it. You could email me at chris.c.h.r.i.s.westfall@gmail, and I'd still get that too. Now, to the systems where you're generating these profiles, that's a different email address. You see it, it's a different email address, and therefore, that's the way we can contact. And obviously, people are generally fairly lazy, meaning that there's only so many email accounts you're going to set up. There's only so many things you're going to go through to defraud a system. And that's a very simple and easy way to do it. So one thing I can do here is I can actually, after the data has been loaded, I can come in here and for this email account, select that, and I'm going to run a transformation. So everybody's heard of ETL, extract, transform, load. Well, this is a load and then transform. What I'm going to do is I'm going to replace any period in the email column with nothing. I'm going to apply that. And what you're going to see is that the email values here are just going to drop out the periods. Okay, so no more periods. Very simple, very straightforward. When I go back to my diagram here, do a reset and then reselect it. So the facets will get regenerated. What you're going to notice now is that I have an email address that's being used by 5 people. So because it was broken down into different email addresses, this takes me down to 5 potential targets. I can go to a link chart. Or actually what I can do there is I can go to a table view. And these are the guys that I've got. And then if I turned off that transformation, then I could see that the original emails that they've got were all variations of that particular one. So there's some kind of collusion going on here, some kind of network, criminal network that's forming, and that these guys are all interrelated through that common account. Most systems wouldn't detect that. Most systems aren't set up to do that, but you saw very quickly I could adapt to my environment and do these things and be able to find and produce pretty good results. And then the final thing I'm going to do, and then I'll turn it back over, is that if I wanted to bring in new data, so I have a file out here, just a comma separated file or a CSV file. These are just business licenses that I've got. I could just take this, I could drag it into my display here. And what it'll do is say, oh, you've got a new file you want to incorporate. And you can see it's fairly straightforward. Hey, here's business licenses for the current year. It gives me a sample of all the columns. And it'll even show me kind of what the preview is for the values in these columns too. And you can see I've got 3 pages worth of columns worth in here, and I can look at them and I can confirm them. I can drill down and say, hey, what's available to me? And then if I'm happy with that, and I'm just going to put my name up here, I can go ahead and load those into my system. And what it's actually doing is it's taking it from my desktop as a user, bringing it up to the server, and making it available to me to consume in my sandbox. Now, Mark can't see this data until I share it out with him, so I've got permissions over this data set. So I can do my own analyses on my own data, and then when appropriate, I can then share it out to him. And so you can see in this case, once it finishes loading, oops, reset here. You see I've got 6,700 records. If I click on this, you'll see with my histograms, I can determine, okay, which fields am I going to pick to maybe do my drill downs on? Maybe I pick the NAICS description. Maybe I pick the, let's say, the neighborhood, and I don't know, how about the trade name? There's trade. I do that, and you can see these, most of these are in Victoria here, but downtown Burnside, you know, so I can go ahead and select this stuff. Hey, let me look at all transactions dealing with, you know, construction, 165 of those. And I'm going to look at those in Victoria West. There's 18 of those. And then boom, you know, I've got already filtered on the data that I just loaded. So you can see it can be very quick to bring in data. And then I could link this source to these other sets where we had values of interest, whether it's an address, an ID number, a phone number, a person's name. And we've got the ability to do fuzzy matching. And so we're here to help you guys do that. That's part of this process that we're involved with, is to make sure your data is modeled properly so you can do these analytics. And obviously, if you're dealing with production systems, you've got a big Oracle system on the back end or something like that, then, you know, we would do everything through like JDBC interfaces and proper API calls to make that as efficient as possible. So there's a lot of flexibility in how we can bring data in, how we can model it, and we can tune this to individual users and customize it accordingly. So on that, I know we're kind of at the end of our hour here. I know we had a little bit of technical difficulty to start with, but are there any questions, or does anybody need to know more information about what we've shown?
Hey, Chris, I got a quick question here. Just in regards to like what you're seeing at the
Thanks, Mark. You have to let me know.
Oh,
Here.
yeah. Yeah, just a quick question here. What you're seeing at the federal level, you know, I know you're working with agencies in the US. What you're seeing at that level, how are those agencies frequently bringing in their data? Is it from spreadsheets? Is it CSV? How is this web becoming populated, and how are other agencies doing it?
Great question. So most of the data sets that come in are coming from databases that they manage and maintain. You know, and let's say you have an Oracle database that has all of the organizational detail and content. So what happens is we would, through database interfaces, JDBC, ODBC connectors, we would map the tables from that Oracle database into the sets that you're looking at here. And so, you know, the list of names here would be all of the employees, all of the beneficiaries, all of the, you know, whoever it is that's in your data sets. And this would be populated through regular updates. And those regular updates could be hourly, they could be at night at 2 in the morning, whenever it might be required to have update to keep the system consistent with the back-end systems. And you can choose, it's not an all or nothing. You can determine what tables, what fields, what conditions you want to bring down into the system and to have those made available. Because we're designed for scalability, we're not restricted from, you know, hey, I can only show you 1 million records. We can load hundreds of millions of records. We can actually go into the billions of records from multiple different sources. And so to the user, you know, you see a simplified model here, but in reality, this could be 25 different databases, you know, with hundreds of millions of records all coming together to present this content to you.
Awesome, thanks, Chris, appreciate it. Just a quick question from the chat here. Do you use some relational database or some kind of in-memory system to store and query data?
Excellent question. So, so we have on the back end a commercial grade database. It's actually a columnar database. And the reason why we don't do it in memory is because then you would have a scalability issue. And even though, you know, a lot of the business intelligence platforms and a lot of these other systems that talk about in-memory analytics, you still will run into upper limits when you get into the trillions of records, because there is still limitation on the memory and how much you can load in. And so, you know, the reason we can move up into the billions of records is because we distribute and we shard out horizontally within a distributed file system. And so that's what the database supports. And we've got actually several patents for that scalability in terms of the replication, the case safeties that we support. So we've not yet reached any kind of a limit. And I know Mark, for I think it was the Department of Homeland Security, I think Mark, you bid out a 24 petabyte system?
46.
Wow, that's the data. So we are designed to handle that. An in-memory platform could not handle that volume of data.
Awesome, thanks, Chris. And I know we're 2 minutes over time here, but one last question that I know is relevant for our space and where we play. How can your solution help my team with providing useful and relevant reports? We are a Microsoft shop and need support with gathering our data and providing results to management on where our challenges are.
Yeah, so everything boils down to the data, right? And again, there are some really good business intelligence tools out there, and there are other analytical tools. And it's all about how efficient they can be in processing that data to get you the results. So one of the nice things about DataWalk is that there's no programming. You don't have to write scripts or do SQL or do Python programming to get the results. You just saw me, you know, it was kind of click, 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 and I can get these results. I can interrelate them together. And so, you know, with using existing Microsoft platforms, you probably have the data in a SQL Server database. So we could interface with that very easily. You know, we can do dashboarding, and we can bring in various dashboards to do business intelligence like activities. But more importantly, you can then generate the reports. What's going to be delivered to the consumer, to management, to the end person for the outcomes that they want to see. And all that is configurable, all that is customizable, and is designed for the end user to generate it, right? So we don't have to hire back in the IT department, have them go off and spend a month before they generate a new report output for us. That all can be done dynamically right in the tool itself. So I don't have any dashboards defined for these sets, but you know, I could bring those in, and right here I could use that to choose from, or as you saw me, I could just use my universe viewer. I could get it to a table. I could export this table if I wanted to, or for any entity in here, I could individually generate a report as well, or I could say, show me, a chart, show me an outcome that I can generate from this that I wanted to send, let's say, to Mark as a PDF file, or to somebody else to evaluate. So it makes it very easy for me to do these things, and these are all configurable. So you're never going to be locked in not being able to do something. And more importantly, let's say down the road, 6 months, a year down the road, there's a phenomenal new technology, and you want to be able to use that technology in the analytics that you've got here. So one of the things that DataWalk gives you is we've got a full set of APIs. And we have this thing called an app center, and we can plug in new technology, which is not our technology, but other third-party technologies. So right now, everybody's gaga about doing machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? And everybody says, well, where's your machine learning? So the nice thing about that is that we can embed different libraries from different machine learning third-party systems. And you can pick and choose whatever you want to have. So you're not going to be forced to use our version. Through the APIs, we can incorporate anything that you want. And that includes all sorts of things like APIs to third-party systems, subscription systems, to natural language processing, to image recognition. So I like to describe ourselves as a data router. Data will come into DataWalk, we can help organize it, and then we can control what other components have to operate on. So if I had let's say I had a record that came in, and I had a remarks or a comment section, and I wanted that comment section to go to a natural language processing, so it would identify key terms out of there for me. I could have DataWalk do that automatically, and then when those terms came back, if any of those were critical, let's say for a terrorist watch list or for financial crimes, the system could then alert on that and then notify a user and then cross-reference that record with another system. And so that's why I talk about this data routing. So we can do all that heavy lift, get the user exactly what they want to see, how they want to see it, but not be restricted in how we do that, or solely by the technology that we support today, because we're extensive. But I hope that made sense with what I was saying. We want you to be successful, and we want you to take advantage of technical advances out there, but we can be that kind of core platform to help orchestrate that, to help route all that and make that a reality without having to build static one-off systems to do it for each, different, data set or each different requirement that you have.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Very, very thorough responses. As you guys can tell, DataWalk's a powerful platform and honestly pretty open-ended. There's a lot that can be done with it. And it's pretty open-ended and can provide a lot of solutions. I know we still have questions. I apologize, we can't get to all of them. I know we have people reaching out for demo, get hands-on with DataWalk. If that's something that you would like, I would encourage you to reach out to me at eric.hein@orangutech.com. I'm more than happy to set something up with Mark, Chris. We also have Paul as well. Paul's part of the DataWalk team. So really would love to get anyone hands-on with DataWalk if they would like to. So please feel free to reach out. I will be reaching out afterwards as well with the recording. This will be up on our YouTube channel. But again, I love the questions, love the engagement. It's a powerful tool. We're happy to be partners with DataWalk, and we really think that this could be the future of data and analytics, and we're really just scratching the surface here. So again, thank you, Evan, for coming out. I appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Eric, thank you.